Hey everyone, thanks to iCine for this one. We're going deep today
Oh, yeah.
into the world of Trichoderma fungi.
Okay.
So we're going microscopic to see how these tiny organisms have a huge impact on agriculture.
Yeah. They're really tiny but mighty.
They are.
These fungi are like nature's secret weapon for healthier plants.
Absolutely. Our guide for this deep dive is a scientific review article
Okay.
called Deciphering Trichoderma Plant Pathogen Interactions for Better Development of Biocontrol Applications from the Journal of Fungi.
Wow.
It's packed with info on how these fungi work and their potential for a more sustainable future in agriculture.
It really highlights how much potential these fungi hold.
Yeah.
They can interact with both plants and pathogens
Right.
in ways that could totally change how we grow food.
Okay, so let's get started. The article describes Trichoderma as incredibly versatile,
Uh-huh.
capable of surviving in all sorts of ways as symbionts, saprotrophs, and even mycoparasites.
Right.
What does that even mean?
Basically it means they're incredibly adaptable. Symbionts form mutually beneficial relationships with other organisms.
Gotcha.
Saprotrophs break down dead organic matter,
Right.
and mycoparasites, well, they prey on other fungi.
Whoa.
It's like they have this whole toolbox of survival skills,
Yeah.
which lets them thrive in so many different environments.
That's really remarkable. And what caught my eye is their ability to form these mutually beneficial partnerships with plants.
Yeah.
Sounds like a classic win-win.
Absolutely. It's all about give and take.
Okay.
The plant offers Trichoderma a safe place and food within its roots.
Uh-huh.
In return, Trichoderma helps the plant grow, increases its yield, and even helps it handle stress.
Wow.
It's a real partnership
Yeah.
where both sides benefit.
So how does this happen? How does Trichoderma provide all these benefits?
Well, think of it this way. Trichoderma is a master communicator.
Well-
It releases all these molecules that act like signals,
Right.
influencing how the plant grows and behaves.
Yeah.
Some are proteins, others are secondary metabolites, and they even release volatile compounds.
Interesting.
It's like sending messages through the air.
It's like they're having a conversation with the plant.
Yeah.
That's wild. The article mentions that Trichoderma can manipulate plant hormones like auxin and ethylene.
Uh-huh.
Sounds kind of sneaky.
It might sound that way, but it's actually really smart.
Okay.
By tweaking these hormones, Trichoderma encourages the plant to grow more roots,
Right.
which means more space and food for the fungus.
I gotcha.
It's like a tenant remodeling their apartment to make it nicer.
Yeah.
But in this case, the landlord, the plant benefits too.
So both the plant and the Trichoderma win in this scenario.
Exactly.
The article also talks about Trichoderma acting like a bodyguard for plants,
Right?
boosting their defenses against threats
Yeah.
through something called induced systemic resistance, or ISR.
Uh-huh.
So it's like a personal trainer for the plant's immune system.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Yep.
Trichoderma basically gives the plant a heads up about danger, so it can react faster and better when attacked.
That's amazing. And it's not just about defending against other fungi, is it? The article says Trichoderma can even help plants defend against insects and nematodes.
Right.
It's a pretty versatile protector.
It is, and the article highlights some great examples.
Like what?
For example, Trichoderma can help grapevines resist downy mildew,
Wow.
which is a nasty fungal disease.
Right.
It's like giving the grapevines a vaccine.
That's cool.
And in tomato plants, Trichoderma can actually change the plant's smell to attract the natural enemies of aphids.
Whoa.
It's like calling in reinforcements.
That's some strategic thinking. It sounds almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
Are there any downsides to these interactions? Could this manipulation have any bad effects on the plant in the long run?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
While Trichoderma is generally considered beneficial,
Okay.
we have to remember that every interaction in nature involves balance.
Wait,
There's always a chance of unintended consequences, especially when introducing Trichoderma to new places.
that makes sense.
That's why research is so important.
So it makes sense to be careful, but it's fascinating to learn about these interactions between plants and fungi.
Yeah.
So we've learned about Trichoderma's role as a plant bodyguard,
Uh-huh.
but it also takes a more direct approach to pathogens, right?
Right. Besides boosting defenses, Trichoderma can directly attack pathogens through competition, mycoparasitism, and antibiosis.
Wow, a multi-pronged attack. Tell me more about these strategies.
Okay.
What does competition involve?
It's pretty simple. Trichoderma outcompetes pathogens for resources like space and nutrients, like a real estate battle.
Okay.
The fungus that gets there first and claims the most territory wins.
Gotcha. And mycoparasitism? That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
What happens there?
It's pretty amazing. Imagine one fungus preying on another.
Whoa.
That's mycoparasitism.
Okay.
Trichoderma is really good at it.
So how does it work?
It starts by detecting chemical signals from the bad guy.
Then it releases enzymes to break down the pathogen's cell walls.
So it targets and weakens the enemy.
Exactly. It's a targeted attack.
Wow. And what about antibiosis? How's that different?
Antibiosis is another kind of chemical warfare.
Okay.
But instead of attacking the pathogen's structure,
Right.
Trichoderma releases antibiotics to stop the pathogen from growing.
Gotcha. So it's like a chemical weapon.
Yeah, it disrupts the enemy's ability to function and spread.
It's incredible how Trichoderma has all these ways to deal with pathogens.
Yeah.
Seems like a tough opponent. But before we move on, I want to thank all of you for listening to this journey into the world of Trichoderma.
Your support really means a lot.
By subscribing to the channel, liking this video, and sharing it with your friends,
Yes.
you help us reach more people and make more of these deep dives.
Every like and share makes a difference.
Okay, back to Trichoderma. We've covered how it helps plants and how it attacks pathogens.
Right.
But the article also talks about the complexity of tripartite interactions.
Where Trichoderma, the plant, and a pathogen are all interacting.
Right.
What makes this so complex?
Well, it's like trying to understand a conversation
Okay.
between three people speaking different languages.
I see.
Each player, the plant, the pathogen, and Trichoderma,
Yeah.
they all have their own signals and responses, and those signals can affect each other, creating a web of interactions that can be difficult to figure out.
So it's not just a case of good versus bad.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's a lot of nuance to these interactions.
Absolutely. It's a dynamic system where the outcome can change depending on a bunch of factors, like the specific strains involved, the environment, and even the other microbes in the soil.
That makes sense. So how do scientists even begin to study something this complex?
It's tough, for sure.
Yeah.
But researchers are using lots of approaches,
Okay.
like lab experiments, field trials, and even computer models
Wow.
to try and understand these tripartite interactions.
So they're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, one promising area is signaling molecules.
Signaling molecules, are those the same ones Trichoderma uses to talk to plants?
Exactly, by understanding how they work.
Right.
Scientists hope to learn more about how Trichoderma interacts with plants and pathogens.
So there's still a lot to learn about these fungi, but switching gears a bit.
Okay.
The article also talks about the potential of Trichoderma in agriculture, with all its abilities. I can see why people are excited.
Absolutely. Trichoderma could change how we grow food.
Wow.
Imagine a world where we don't need so many pesticides and fertilizers because we're using these beneficial fungi.
That sounds like a dream for anyone who cares about the environment.
It does.
And sustainable agriculture. But are we there yet? Are there any products using Trichoderma?
Yes, actually.
Really?
Several companies already sell Trichoderma-based products for use as biopesticides and biofertilizers.
Wow.
They're being used on a variety of crops, and the results are promising.
So it's not just a fantasy, it's actually happening.
It is.
But if they're already available, why haven't they replaced chemical pesticides and fertilizers completely?
Yeah.
Are there challenges to using them more widely?
There are a few.
Like what?
One is consistency. We need to make sure these products work reliably for farmers everywhere.
Okay.
Another is finding the right strain for the job.
Right.
Trichoderma species are really diverse, and different strains have different strengths.
Makes sense.
It's like choosing the right tool.
Yeah.
We need to use the best strain for the specific crop and problem.
So there's no one-size-fits-all solution?
No.
Are there other challenges too?
Yes. For example, we still need to understand how Trichoderma interacts with other things in the soil.
Right.
The soil is full of microbes.
Yeah.
And adding Trichoderma could disrupt the balance.
That's true.
We need to make sure we're not creating new problems.
So it's important to be careful, but it's exciting to see how research is leading to a more sustainable future in agriculture. Speaking of research, the article goes into tripartite interactions. Can you talk more about those and give some specific examples?
Sure. Remember how we talked about how complex those interactions are?
Yeah, with Trichoderma, a plant and a pathogen.
Right. Well, one example is the interaction between Trichoderma plants and mycorrhizal fungi.
Mycorrhizal fungi. Those are the good fungi that help plant roots, right?
Exactly. They help plants absorb nutrients and water from the soil.
Gotcha.
Now, sometimes Trichoderma can compete with them for resources.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes they can coexist and even help each other.
Really?
It's like a dance between these different fungi, and the outcome depends on different things.
So it's not always good versus bad.
Right. It's about understanding the relationships between them and how they affect each other.
That's interesting. And another example is the role of Trichoderma in plant defenses against insects. We've talked about how it can attract good insects.
Right.
But it can also affect the bad insects directly.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
How does it do that?
Well, some studies have shown that Trichoderma can stop certain insect larvae from growing and eating.
Wow.
It can even mess with their molting process,
Yeah.
making them easier for predators to catch.
So it's like weakening the enemy from the inside.
Exactly.
And this shows another layer of complexity in tripartite interactions. Trichoderma doesn't just interact with the plant and pathogens separately.
Right.
It affects all the organisms living in and around the plant.
It does.
It makes you wonder if we could use Trichoderma to control other pests besides aphids.
Definitely researchers are looking into that.
So it could be useful against other crop-destroying insects.
It could be, but we need more research.
Right.
To understand how well it works and how to use it best.
Makes sense.
Every insect is different. What works against one might not work against another.
This deep dive has been an incredible learning experience.
Yeah.
Every time we learn something new about Trichoderma, it leads to more questions and possibilities.
Yeah.
What are some of the most exciting research areas right now?
One area that's really interesting is using genomics to figure out how Trichoderma does all these amazing things. By sequencing the genomes of different strains, scientists are finding genes involved in mycoparasitism, antibiosis, and plant growth promotion.
So it's like reading the instruction manual for these fungi.
Exactly. And this information can help us make better Trichoderma products.
Wow, that's cool. Another exciting area is developing new ways to use and apply Trichoderma.
Yeah.
Researchers are experimenting with different methods, like seed coatings, soil amendments, and even foliar sprays.
It's about finding the best way to get this fungus to where it's needed.
Exactly. And finally, there's growing interest in using Trichoderma with other beneficial organisms. Imagine combining fungi and bacteria that work together to make plants healthier and protect crops.
A microbial dream team.
It sounds like we're at the start of a new era in farming, where we work with nature instead of against it.
Right.
To grow food in a way that's productive and sustainable.
Absolutely.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, it's important to remember that we're only just learning about Trichoderma.
That's true, as with any new technology.
Right.
There are potential risks and challenges to consider.
Yeah. And speaking of cautious optimism, the article ends on a similar note.
Okay.
While there are challenges ahead, the benefits of Trichoderma are too big to ignore.
Right.
Imagine a future with fewer chemicals.
Yeah.
Where plants are stronger against disease and the environment is healthier. It's a future worth working towards.
Absolutely. And it's a future we can achieve if we keep investing in research and development.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive, but I think we've only scratched the surface of Trichoderma.
It's a fascinating journey.
It is.
And we're glad you're here, but we're almost out of time for this part.
Okay.
We'll be back after a short break to wrap things up.
Sounds good.
Well, it's like trying to understand a conversation. Yeah.
Between three people speaking different languages.
I see.
You got the pathogen and Trichoderma.
Okay.
They all have their own signals and responses, and those signals can affect each other, creating a web of interactions that can be hard to untangle.
So it's not just good versus bad.
Nope.
It sounds like there's a lot of nuance to these interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very dynamic system.
Okay.
And the outcome can change.
Right.
Depending on a ton of factors.
Like what kind of things?
Like the specific strains involve the environment, even other microbes in the soil.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do scientists even begin to study something this complex?
It's a challenge for sure.
I bet.
But researchers are using a bunch of different approaches, like lab experiments, field trials, even computer modeling.
Wow.
To try and put together the pieces of this puzzle.
So they're trying to figure out these tripartite interactions.
Yeah. One promising area is looking at signaling molecules. Signaling molecules are the same ones that Trichoderma uses to communicate with plants.
Exactly, by understanding how those molecules work.
Okay.
Scientists are hoping to get a better idea of how Trichoderma manipulates plant defenses and interacts with those pathogens.
So it seems like there's a lot we still don't know about these fungi.
Yeah.
But changing gears a bit,
the
article also mentions the potential of Trichoderma in agriculture. Given everything it can do, I can see why people are excited about this.
Absolutely. Trichoderma has the potential to revolutionize how we grow food.
Really?
Imagine a world where we can reduce our reliance on synthetic pesticides and fertilizers by using the power of these fungi.
That sounds amazing for the environment and for sustainable agriculture.
Yeah.
But are we actually there yet? Are there any trichoderma-based products available right now?
Yes, actually.
Oh, wow.
A few companies have already commercialized trichoderma products for things like biopesticides and biofertilizers.
And are farmers actually using these?
They're being used on various crops, and the results are looking pretty good.
So it's not just an idea, it's actually happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
But if these products are already out there, why haven't they replaced chemical pesticides and fertilizers completely?
That's a good question.
Are there challenges to adopting them more widely?
There are a few challenges.
Like what kind of things?
Well, one is consistency. We need to make sure these products will give reliable results for farmers.
Right, because it's their livelihood.
Exactly, in a variety of environments.
You can't just work in a lab.
Right. And another challenge is finding the right strain for the right job.
Okay.
Trichoderma is a very diverse species. And the different strains have different strengths and weaknesses.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Nope. It's like choosing the right tool.
Right.
We need to make sure we're using the best strain for that specific crop.
Right. And for that specific problem.
Exactly.
Are there other challenges too?
There are, yeah.
Wait, what else?
For example, we still need to fully understand how trichoderma interacts with other organisms in the soil.
Right.
The soil is like a whole ecosystem full of microbes.
Yeah.
And introducing trichoderma could disrupt that delicate balance.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't want to create new problems while we're trying to solve old ones.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder that even with natural solutions, we have to be cautious.
We do.
But it's exciting to see how this research is paving the way for a more sustainable future in agriculture.
It is really exciting.
Speaking of research, the article goes into these tripartite interactions in more detail.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on those a bit and maybe share some specific examples?
Sure. Remember how we talked about the complexity of these interactions between trichoderma, a plant, and a pathogen? Well, one fascinating example is the interaction between trichoderma plants and mycorrhizal fungi.
Mycorrhizal fungi. Those are the beneficial fungi that have those symbiotic relationships with plant roots, right?
Exactly. They help plants absorb nutrients and water from the soil.
Gotcha.
Now, in some cases, trichoderma can actually compete with mycorrhizal fungi for those resources.
Good.
But in other cases, they can coexist.
Interesting.
And even enhance each other's benefits.
So they can actually work together.
It's like this delicate dance between all these different fungi.
Yeah.
And the result depends on various factors.
So again, it's not always this clear-cut good versus bad.
Not always.
Okay.
It's about understanding the relationships between these organisms and how they influence each other.
Gotcha. Another example that comes to mind is the role of trichoderma in mediating plant defenses against insects. We discussed how trichoderma can attract beneficial insects that prey on pests.
Right.
But it can also directly impact the behavior and development of those pests.
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty incredible. How does it do that?
Well, some studies show that trichoderma can actually inhibit the growth and feeding of certain insect larvae.
Oh, wow.
It can even interfere with their molting process, which makes them more vulnerable to predators.
So it's not just about calling in reinforcements. It's also about weakening the enemy from within.
Exactly. And this highlights another layer of complexity in those tripartite interactions. Trichoderma doesn't just interact with the plant and the pathogen on their own.
Right.
It influences the entire web of organisms living around the plant.
It's like a whole community.
It is.
It makes you wonder about the potential for using trichoderma to control other pests besides aphids.
Yeah, it does.
Is that something that researchers are exploring?
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of research going on right now.
Okay.
Looking at the potential of trichoderma to control a wide range of insect pests.
What kind of pests?
We're talking caterpillars, beetles, even some types of flies.
So it could be a valuable tool in our fight against crop-destroying insects.
Potentially, yes. But more research is needed.
Of course.
To understand how effective it is and how to best use it.
Right.
You know, each insect species is unique.
Right.
What works against one might not work against another.
All right. Every pest needs a different approach.
Exactly.
This deep dive has been an incredible learning experience so far.
Yes.
It seems like every time we uncover one fascinating aspect of trichoderma, it just leads to even more questions and possibilities.
It really does.
What are some of the most exciting areas of research in this field right now?
Well, one area that's generating a lot of excitement is the use of genomics to understand the molecular mechanisms behind Trichoderma's incredible abilities.
Yeah.
By sequencing the genomes of different strains, scientists are identifying genes involved in mycoparasitism,
Right.
antibiosis, and plant growth promotion.
So it's like we're figuring out the instruction manual for these amazing fungi.
Exactly. And that information can then be used to develop more targeted and effective Trichoderma-based products.
So we can make them even better.
Another exciting area is the development of new formulations and delivery systems.
Okay.
Researchers are testing different ways to package and apply Trichoderma to crops.
What kind of ways?
Things like seed coatings, soil amendments, and even foliar sprays.
So finding the best way to get the Trichoderma where it needs to go.
Exactly. And finally, there's a growing interest in using Trichoderma in combination with other beneficial organisms. Imagine creating blends of fungi and bacteria that work together to promote plant health and protect crops from a whole bunch of threats.
It's like creating a microbial dream team for sustainable agriculture.
Yeah, it is.
It sounds like we're on the verge of a whole new era in farming.
It does.
Where we're working with nature to produce food in a way that's both productive and sustainable.
Absolutely.
But before we get too carried away with all this excitement,
I
think it's important to remember that we're only just scratching the surface of what we know about Trichoderma.
That's true, as with any new technology.
Right.
There are potential risks and challenges that we need to think about before widespread adoption.
Of course. So we need to proceed with caution.
We do.
But it's still incredibly exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is.
And speaking of cautious optimism, the article ends on a similar note.
Okay.
While there are challenges ahead, the potential benefits of Trichoderma are just too big to ignore.
That's right.
Imagine a future where we can grow crops with fewer chemical inputs.
Yeah.
Where plants are more resilient to diseases and pests. And where the environment is healthier. It's a future worth striving for.
Absolutely. And it's a future that's within our reach.
Yeah.
If we continue to invest in research development and responsible implementation of these incredible fungi.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
But we've only just begun to uncover the amazing potential of Trichoderma.
That's true.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I'm glad you could join us.
Me too, but we're just about out of time for this part of the deep dive.
Okay.
We'll be back after a short break to wrap things up.
Welcome back to the show. It's been a fascinating journey into the world of Trichoderma.
It really has, and I hope our listeners are starting to see just how amazing these fungi are.
Absolutely. We've learned about their ability to survive in all sorts of ways.
Right.
And we've talked about how they can manipulate plants and even fight off pathogens.
Yeah. It's incredible how much they can do.
I know. It really makes you think about the power of nature.
It does. These microscopic organisms are doing all these complex things right under our feet.
I know, and we're just starting to understand them.
Yeah, there's still so much to learn.
It makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden in the microbial world.
Right. But for now, let's stick with Trichoderma.
Okay.
And its potential for agriculture.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the good stuff. But we should also mention that there are still some unanswered questions.
That's true.
And potential risks.
Right. We need to be careful with any new technology.
Absolutely. So what are some key takeaways from this deep dive?
Let's see.
What do you want our listeners to remember about Trichoderma?
Well, first I want them to remember that nature is powerful.
Okay.
And we can learn a lot from understanding the systems that already exist.
Right, it's like nature already has the solutions.
Exactly. Trichoderma is a perfect example.
So we just have to figure out how to use those solutions.
Responsibly, yeah. And second, I want listeners to remember that a holistic approach is important.
What do you mean?
Well, we can't just focus on individual organisms.
Right.
We need to consider the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, we need to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And lastly, I want listeners to remember that the future of agriculture is up to us.
What do you mean?
As consumers, we have the power to change agricultural practices.
Right, by making choices about what we buy.
Exactly. Every purchase is a vote for the kind of agriculture we want to see.
That's a great point.
By supporting sustainable practices, we can help create a future where agriculture is productive and good for the planet.
Well said. And to wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a question.
All right.
We've talked about how great Trichoderma is, but what are the risks, or the downsides, to using it in agriculture?
That's something to think about.
It's while Trichoderma has A lot of potential.
Yeah.
We need to remember that even natural solutions can have unintended consequences.
That's true. Careful research is really important.
Absolutely. Well, a huge thank you to Iceni for suggesting this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Iceni.
We've really enjoyed diving into the world of Trichoderma fungi.
It's been fun.
And as always, thanks to all of you, our incredible listeners, for joining us.
You guys are the best.
By subscribing to our channel, liking this video, and sharing it with your friends.
Yes, please.
You help us reach more people.
And make more deep dives.
Exactly. Every subscription, every share helps us keep making these explorations.
So hit that subscribe button.
Yes. Spread the word.
And stay curious.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to spark your imagination. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.